And I'm curious, when you're working with teams, sports teams versus business teams, like are the conflicts pretty similar? Are the conversations you have experienced similar, or do you see differences?
You know what? I think a lot of the conflicts are the same. Like I said, a lot of it goes back to trying to reach a standard or a goal. I think the second thing that comes up, the most common one you see, is an underperforming player or underperforming employee. So not just not reaching or striving or getting a job done, but just the guy who doesn't execute his role, or the individual who's not completely bought in, or the individual who doesn't respect others. It's either, kind of a group problem going towards the standard or an individual problem. So you see a lot of those. The one thing I've noticed, and I think this is why there's such a crossover now between athletics and business people, is because how it's handled is completely different in both realms. There is conflicts are the same, but how they go about fixing it and how they go about fixing the confrontation is not the same. In sports, a coach will shout at somebody. In sports, they'll have a team meeting right in front of everybody. I think so much of it, and I use this term, and I fear this in the sports world, but so much of it becomes a corporate standard or a corporate way of doing anything. Like, hey, this guy's underperforming. Well, let's go to the checklist. Like, Jacob, here's check number 1. Are you doing this? All right, we'll meet again. Here's check number 2 on week 2. Sometimes I think you got to say, screw that, rip up the paper, move on, and meet with another person face to face, come up with a plan to get them better, hold them accountable to it, don't fear confrontation, and then start seeing how the results go after that. Because in sports, I do think this happens, and sorry if I'm rambling. I'm not rambling, but going on
I'm here for it. That's what a podcast is all about, man. I love it.
Here's what I think that happens, and this is something really, really cool. Business is lacking things that sports are that could really, really help them. And I think that's why some of these businesses have brought me out to work with them on communication and leadership and competitiveness and urgency and accountability. Think about this, though. In sports, you are getting coached every day. In business, you are not getting coached every day. And sometimes you're being led, or sometimes there's a manager. You're not getting coached. In sports, they're literally telling you something to do or something to do better or continue to do this great every day. So one, I think business people are lacking being coached or having a life coach, a development coach, whoever with their organization. The second thing I think that happens in businesses, happens in sports way more than business, way quicker evaluations, which equals way quicker accountability. Think about it. Like you said, we're starting this podcast off. You're like, this quarter, we are focusing on this. You play like Damian Lillard, he gets evaluated 3 nights a week playing games, sometimes 4.
Yeah.
I work.
And then in the off season, he's evaluated on what he's doing with his personal life, right? It's always eyeballs, but yeah.
Absolutely. I worked with Oregon football a couple years ago. Same thing, communication, mindset. Mario Cristobal and I would talk once a week. Mario Cristobal and his team is getting evaluated weekly on how they're performing. And I think that doesn't happen all the time in the business world. On the flip side, and this is where I love your content on Twitter, and you share some great stuff that has made me and my guys better. But on the flip side, what sports is lacking, the 2 things that business is great, one, clarity. There is a goal set, right? There's a process.
Sometimes they have the clarity.
Okay,
in the best case scenario, but yeah.
The people who are succiting, at least, right? You would say it. So there's a goal set. There's a process in place to go about it, and there's identifiers in there if you're doing a good job, and there's places. Are there things put in place if it goes astray? So one, clarity, and then 2, like I said, I think that what sports is lacking is more of an overall organizational plan for their employees. The sport says we want to do this for our team, we want to do this for our players, but so much of staff development and plans for the employees is lacking a ton, whether it's college football, college basketball, some of these different places I've gone. There's not a plan to develop the staff or develop the employees.
I love that you say that. So I coach a it'll be a fifth grade. It's my son. So it'll be a fifth grade basketball team this year. I coached his team last year. And something I thought about in the offseason is like, we should have done development plans for every player. Like, make sure there's clarity with like the players and the parents on like, here's what we want you to help your son get better at this season. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'm definitely completely aligned with that sort of a
Jacob,
perspective.
we talk about this all the time. I coached college basketball for 10 years before going into my own venture the last 5 years. And we always say high clarity equals high performance. So many leaders, so many employees, so many athletes, and I don't care if they're fifth graders, they are lacking clarity. And if you want people to perform at a high level, the expectation, the plan, the direction you're heading has to be clear. It has to be super clear. So whenever we work with a player, what we create is a cheat sheet, not just a plan. Like, they're going to have a cheat sheet of who they're trying to become, how they're trying to get there, what they need to work on. And then same thing, we've taken that in the sports world. We give it to some of these top business leaders. They love it. Why? Because everyone wants to, I think deep down, most people want to be coached. Most people want to be poured into, and most people want to grow. So if we're not giving them the clarity to do that, it's gonna make their job harder.
I used to be surprised when I work with a leader and they would give me the rundown on their team, like where they're struggling. And I would ask, like, when did you give them this feedback? And like 80% of the time, they're like, well, I haven't yet. And it's like, well, how do you expect them to get better if we're not taking the initiative to have those direct conversations with them? Because to your point, most people want to get better. They want to understand what doing a good job looks like. They want to be recognized when they are doing a good job. And if we're not setting clear expectations, we can't follow up and then recognize them for doing a good job.